Assalamualaikum. Today our group will present on the topic attention as limited capacity resources. Our group consists of 3 members which is Muhammad ZULHAIRI FIKRI bin ZULKIFLI, Nurzuelaikha Binti Affizan, and me Syed Haziq bin Syed Muhammad Khairizam, and we are from RSA 2433A. So we're gonna start our presentation with what is attention. Attention is called as a focus or concentration, which is the ability to focus on something that is relevant to the task and ignore the other information. While attention in sports is the ability of an athlete to keep focus on the task in order to maintain their performance and also to achieve their specific goals. Next is type of attention. There are 4 types of attention. Firstly, sustained attention. Sustained attention is an ability to focus on one specific task for a continuous amount of time without being distracted. For the example, when you are playing a video game or game like a PUBG, of course you want to keep focusing on your phone screen. Second is selective attention, which the ability to select from the various factors or stimuli that are present and to focus on only that one that you want. For an example, in a crowded place while you are talking to a person, you will focusing on your conversation instead of disturbing by the other environment noise such as sirens, music, vehicle and other things that you can hear clearly. Next is executive attention that focus intently in order to achieve a specific goal while monitoring the progress. For an example, doing a last minute work, the goal is the due dates, so you need to finish your work before you submit it to your lecturer. Lastly is divided attention, which is the ability to process 2 or more responses or react into 2 or more different demands stimulously by doing your assignments while on the phone with your boyfriends or girlfriends. There are 3 characteristics associated with attention, which are cognitive efforts, consciousness, and awareness. For this topic, there are some theory that we can relate on attention. For an example, filter theory. This theory consists of the cocktail party effects by Colin Cherry 1953, then decoded listening task by Donald Broadbent 1958, and Broadbent's filter theory also by the Donald Broadbent 1958. So I will explain more about cocktail party effect. The cocktail party effect is the ability to focus on a single talker among the mixture of conversations and background noises. There are experiments that have been conducted for this particular effect. The experiment that have been conducted is using decoded listening tasks. The subject were asked to listen to 2 different messages from a single loudspeaker or headphones at the same time. They are trying to separate them and only repeat one messages. This known as a shadowing task. While shadowing task, there are 2 auditory messages. One of messages have to be repeated back aloud or shadowed. Okay, now let's see how this decoded listening task that have been done. Again, the person will ask to listen to both messages at the same time and then repeat what they heard. When you are looking at this example picture, you guys can see this person just ignore the horses galloped across the field. Then he just focusing on the President Lincoln, often read by the light of the fire. This is because he focusing on the something that important and related with what he wanna say. So this person has choose President Lincoln as his speech out. This broadband filter theory have been found out based on shadowing tasks and decoded listening tasks. From these tasks, there are the key assumptions in this theory, such as 2 messages presented at the same time that gain access in a parallel to a sensory buffer. which is mechanisms that maintain the information for the short period of the time before it processes of their disappear. One of the input is the allow through a filter based on its physical characteristic, which the other input only briefly in the buffer for the later processing. This filter prevent overloads of the limited capacity mechanism beyond the filter and process of the input. Okay, Broadband's early selection theory. Broadband's idea was that all the informations in your environment goes into your sensory register, which briefly registers or store all the sensory input you get. This includes your work, song, sirens and any input at all. Then, this input get transferred to the selective filter right away, which identify what it's supposed to be attending to via basic physical characteristic. So, if we are talking about language, the selective filter identify the voice, pitch, speed and accents, basic thing that like that. You don't really need to understand in order to identify it. Everything else get filtered out and the selected information get moved along that perception processes can occur. This process assigns meaning to the informations. So, while selective filter identify the pitch of the one you want to pay attention, the perceptual processes identify it as your friend's voice and assign a meaning to the word. And you can get engaged in the cognitive process, such as deciding how to respond. Next is douche late selection theory. This theory moves broadband selective filter to after the perceptual processes. This means that you are actually do the register and assign the everything meaning, but then your selective filter decided what to pass on your conscious awareness. But keep in mind that all this has to be happen really quickly. When you think that there are some information that you don't want to pay attention for, so the answer may be somewhere in between early selection and the late selection. So we come to the Treatment attenuations theory of selective attention. Treatment said that instead of a selective filter, we can have something called an attenuator. Attenuate just means to weakens but does not eliminate the input from the unattended ear. Some of it get through to the perceptual processes, so we still assign meaning to stuff in the unattended ear. It just not as high the priority. At this point, if you realize that the unattended stuff is actually important, then you will switch over your attention and attenuate what you were previously listening. So now, hopefully, you guys have a little better understanding of this theory that I have tried to explain these important processes. That's all for me. We proceed with our next presenter. Thank you.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurzuelaikha Binti Affizan. So today I am present to all of you guys with my part, which is Central Resource Capacity Theory and Kahneman's Attention Theory. So let's go start. So in this slide, we have a definition for Central Resource Capacity Theory. So what is Central Resource Capacity Theory? So it is a person give an effort upon activity to carry this out. And the second one is purpose, one central source of attentions, resources for which all activities require attentions complete. So this means that which all the athlete needs to require attentions to complete. And the last one is difficulty doing multiple tasks simultaneously because of limitation due to availability of resources needed to carry out these tasks. So this means that some of people having difficulty to do one or more tasks with simultaneously or continuously because of the limitations. So in this slide, we have Kahneman's attention theory. So what is Kahneman's attention theory? Kahneman described attention as a reservoir of mental energy from which resources are drawn to meet situational and attentional demands for task processing. He then argued that mental effort reflects variations in processing demand, and it equates attention with cognitive effort. So I'll give you one example, which is we have Mr. A that driving a car, and Mr. B is his passenger. So Mr. A is driving a car while Mr. B keep talking with Mr. A. So at the first moment, Mr. A have a fully attentions with his driving, but Mr. B keep disturb Mr. A with having some conversation. So the attention of Mr. A are not full on the driving anymore, but the attentions it's separate with having some conversation with Mr. B. So this is one example that we can relate with Kahneman's attention theory. So I hope you guys understand. So next we have three rules in Kahneman's attention theory that people always use to allocate the available attention resource when performing multiple tasks. So firstly, we have ensure completion, which is at least one task. So this means that if we having multiple tasks to do, we have to make sure that at least one task complete first, so we can do another task later. And then the second rules is enduring disposition, which is involuntary attention locations. And the last rule that people always use is momentary attentions, which is allocate attentions according to instructions. So this means that people that having attention during the instruction that people giving to them. So there are three rules that people always use to have attentions when performing multiple tasks. So that's all from me. I will proceed with the next presenter. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi, welcome back everyone. I'm Muhammad ZULHAIRI FIKRI bin ZULKIFLI from RSR 2433A. Today I'm going to discuss about resources capacity theories. So what is resources capacity theories? Propose attention limit where the result of the limited availability of resources. This theory states that what we have limited resources when it's time to give an attention, and that we have to split our attention within these limited resources when we do a multiple task, and that will do the task. For example, the first task is use more resources and the second task is limited and can only use the remaining amount of resources. So for example, your main task is driving a car and your friend or your family asks to volume up the radio, so the possibility of attention for the main task is low. You are not focusing on the main task. Because what? Because potential capacity is limited. So that is simple example for you to understand. Okay, so we proceed to the next slide. For this slide, I'm going to show you the pie chart. As you can see, the left pie chart show that you have a simple primary task, that you have more resources remaining for the second task. For the right pie chart, show when you have the more complex task, such as driving, you have less resources availability to do secondary tasks such as testing or calling. So that all for resources capacity theories. If you have a question, you can comment. So next, we proceed to the next slide. The procedure for assessing attention demand. For this dual task procedure, determine the attention demand characteristic of simultaneous performance of two different types. You have a primary task, will pass interest, and for secondary task is a performance is the basic to make interference about the attention demand of the primary task. So there are two tasks. Next, we proceed to the next slide. So this slide is a procedure for assessing attention demand. So these are attentional focus, and it will more to directing attention to specific characteristic in performance, environment, or action preparation activity. These are focus be broad or narrow. For the direction of focus can be external or internal. For the attention switching, so there are two attention. Just now I said attentional focus, and now attentional switching can occur to achieve a successful performance, but can have advantage and disadvantage depend on the activity. Next, we go through to the multiple resources theory. Let's take a look about the slide. The MRT, multiple resources theory, is described by Wickens in 1984. Next, multiple attention resources and in some cases are different with one another. This means the person can perform two different tasks at the same time without time interference. I will give you some example. You replying a text during driving a car in a heavy traffic. Next, the difficulty of the task will increase when the resources task require a performance. Okay, I give you some example. When the person driving a car while replying a text, the driver see the traffic light turn from green light to red light. So he or she has to stop the car. So the word stop the car is increasing of difficulty of the task. That's all. We proceed to the next slide. So in this slide, these are three basic components and also known the process. There are three processes. Firstly, input. Secondly, input processing. And the third one is the third response. Proceed to the next slide. Let's take a look about the first stage, which you can look at the three-dimension box. There are four in the first stage, which is input. There are four stages and four types, which is the first one is visual, auditory, spatial, and verbal. Which visual mean in Malay is penglihatan, auditory is pendengaran, spatial is respond to our body, and verbal is percakapan. Let's take a look about the model. The input process, which is the first stage, has four visual, auditory, spatial, and verbal. So we take a look about auditory. I will give you some example. I call someone, so he listen to my voice. When he listen to my voice, he go to the next stage. He listen to my voice. He need to process about my voice, what he has to do. So he must to respond or not. So when he want to respond, let's go to verbal. And when he responding, go to the vocal and respond to my call. For those who don't understand about my explanation, I will put on some animation on the next slide so that you will understand clearly.
Hello everyone. In this video, we will explain the model of multiple resources to you with an everyday example. Imagine you're driving home from work. Then your phone vibrates. Eager to see who texted you, you're taking out your phone, read the new message and answer it. While doing so, you don't focus on the traffic, which results in you not seeing the red light. This situation is dangerous. But why can't we cope with multitasking? We will explain this with the model of multiple resources.
The model created by Christopher Wickens has three dimensions. The first dimension is divided into two stages, perception and cognition, and a select and execute action, which is the reaction.
Let's put in our example, but without you hearing and texting on your phone. You first watch the traffic and see a red light, which belongs to the perception and cognition stage of the first dimension. The reaction to the red light is you are braking.
Now that we added our actions to the cube, the second dimension comes in. The second dimension describes how input is processed. It is divided into spatial and verbal processing.
Let's move in our example in the right place, to spatial.
Now to the third dimension. It is for the modalities. These show into which perception channel your attention is divided. This model has three channels: visual, auditory, and tactile.
While watching the traffic and seeing the red light, visual modalities are used. The actual braking is a tactile modality. Now that our actions are sorted into our model, we can add the actions of us hearing our phone vibrating, taking it out, and writing a message.
As you can see in the model, hearing your phone vibrating doesn't interfere with any previous added action. But taking your phone out and writing a message does. It interferes with watching the traffic on the visual modality channel and on the tactile one with braking. They are also both reaction and both in the spatial process channel.
This interference shows why multitasking is hard for us in some situations. We can't pay 100% attention to both actions. So don't text and drive.
So that's all from our group. Last but not least, stay safe everyone and stay healthy. Bye-bye. Thank you.